Okay, so how do you serve static files in Express? Simple. You go to this. You see this here. It says app.use express.static forward slash pub. The app this public. I'm using the Zoom. Okay, so here you can see what would happen is everything in the public directory would be available on the on your Express app. Okay, so does anybody have a problem here? Yes, no. So you remember how we did hello world? We just specified for forward slash whatever, and then it gave you that. So now the only thing that you have to do is, okay, you have to serve those pages, static pages. Simple. Just write this line app.use express.static public. In that case, all of the things that you have in your public directory would be served as static files. Okay, pretty simple. Just one line of code. But that's what I'm saying. If you have this one line of code, it is easier for us to have to build the application going forward. So we have the base application ready after assignment number two. Okay. So okay, so going on. So we have this form. Okay, in a form we have a search tag. On the search tag, once you click enter or something like that, we want to call an API, right? You have to call API to fetch the information. So now in the Angular world, what do you think we should create first? A component. Okay, what should the component have? Okay, hang on for that. You see the header, footer, and all those navigation that we need to have in our assignment. Instead of having it in each individual component, it could be in your main component, right? And then you could have other things refreshed or other things changed on that page. Remember, we're having a single page application. So So let's say this was our page, okay, and in this page we want to have what, a main component. So that's your app component. Remember that is the mandatory thing that you need to have. So this would be your app component. Makes sense. It would accompany, it will have everything. Now in this app component, what you could have is you could maybe have the some text like some navigation or whatever, right? So this would be your navigation, and then inside that navigation you could have like a small component window where all of your other components are shown, right? In here you would have everything, your search thing, whatever, right? So whenever, remember, this place, this page would have to be changed, right? It has to be changed. So let's say you're trying to display the component for, I'm going to say, the restaurant profile. Okay, so you would show this profile here, but after that, but before that, before showing the restaurant profile, what do you need to have? You need to show the search thingy, right? So that would be your another component here, right? So that could be your another component. This could be your search component, right? So let's say you search it, you search first, and when you click, you find the restaurant you like, you can click on it, and then what would happen is this component would be thrown out and this component would be loaded in. Make sense, right? Very simple flow. Now there is one thing that all both these components share, that is the logic to call something, that is to call your endpoint, your server endpoint, or your Google endpoint, right? So what we have is Google allows you to have an API called as Places API. Okay, so what it does is you could give it so that's endpoint that Google provides, where if you fire the add thing called as query, and then you add whatever you add to it, say Albany or Clifton Park or whatever, and you give it a type is equal to restaurant. So you have to form this request, right? And if when you do all those things, it will give you the response as a JSON object, right? As a JSON object, and then what you have to do is you parse that JSON object and get things done. Okay, simple logic. So this logic to fetch the information of a restaurant, you see, it's not limited to one component. It could be done in a service. That's why what you create is you create a service. A service is responsible for calling that endpoint and getting things that this component requires. Right? This is not mandatory. But the reason we are doing this is because we want to have a good architecture for your application. Because as your application grows bigger and bigger, if you have your services separately, you could always make changes very in a very uh, fast pace, at a very fast pace. So now let's look at what we will be doing here. Now I have a simple application that I have currently made. So I've referred this website. I'll be linking this website for sure. Where is the website? Not this one. Not this one. Not this one. Okay, I'll post a link. Don't worry. I think this is the one. This is the one, right? So I would post a link for this. So don't worry about it. What we essentially have is, if you go to localhost 4200, in my case you could have 8800, because you remember you're serving from Express.js after you're done with all of these things. Make sense? So now you see this, I have just one text here called as news. When I click on news, I have all the current news that we currently have. Make sense? So we just have a list of all the news that we have. So in that case, let's say I'm going to show the code. Okay, so first of all, let me commit these changes. So okay, so let's go back and let's look at this application here. Okay, now I'm just creating a temporary repository. This one. So you see, I have nine commits here. I'm going to go commit by commit. Okay. So in the initially what you understand what a commit is, right? So it's a work of it's a unit of work. Okay. So I'm going to this initial commit. You see, what I created is, this was just the basic Angular app that you get after you type in ng new app, right? So these are all the files that you already get with the ng command. Okay, so you see all the basic structure that we have. So now if I go back to this, okay, I say get okay. So now in this case, if I do ngserve nvm, again make sure you have at least 10 or above. So if I do ngserve now, I have it running here, that's fine. So you should compile everything, and will have the basic thing that we had previously seen, right, in the previous lab. So there you go. Okay, I have the oh shit. Okay, got it. Okay, fine. Okay, now if I compile it again. Remember, we are using TypeScript, so this allows you to have. So like in JavaScript, you don't have type. So like static typing. So like if let's say you have a variable, the type of variable is just var, right? It does not. It's not a number. It's not a. It's nothing. But in TypeScript, it allows you to give type to a variable also, right? So if you go back here, of course, there are many other things. You have classes. You have everything that newer JavaScript support, but the old one don't. So there are many things. So this is like a basic thing that we did, right? So now what I'm going to do now is, let's say, see this, add a new service. So the first thing you do is you create a new service. All right. So just how do you create a new service? It's very simple. You just do ng generate service news API service. All right. There you have it. That's a news API service. If you go back here, it should be here. Where is it? See, news API service. Okay. Okay. I already had it created, so it is there. Okay, create a new one, but that's fine. So you see the new one is created over here. The my previous, I gave it the same name, so it kind of gave it a service. But anyways, you see here it has like, what is this? It's an injectable, right? So this service can be injected to any other component as you require. Okay. After that, we have this constructor. So what happens is, every class that you create, we all know from object-oriented programming languages, it's a constructor is called when you create the class, when you create an object from that class. Okay. Now what happens is, remember this constructor is just for dependency injection. So let's say you have to do something like, okay, when the component loads, then you have to write some code. That code will not come here. That code will come in a function called as ng on init. So this is a life cycle method. So what a life cycle method is, as Angular application starts up, or there are multiple things that it has to do, right? So one of the things that it has to do is to call everything, right? So let me have when the page is ready, or when the component is loaded, or all those things, right? So all I'm saying is ng, that is Angular, on init. So on initialization, run this method. All right. So that is why you add a new method called as ng on init. Right. So you see this method will be called after the constructor is called. Constructor is only used for dependencies. Okay. You don't write any logic in the constructor. Right. So now let's look at this service. Now you see this, we spoke about the ng on init function. So let's look at the service that I already had. So look at this service, right? What we have is, okay, this is the class. Okay, API new service is a class. Now in that, what I've created is, I've just created a new variable called as API key. Okay, now every API you called, so let's say you have to call some API on the internet. How would that provider know who you are? So the usual way to do is, you send a key that is only personal to your application. So let's say your application is hacked, or it's something happens and you're banned from it. Right? In that case, that API key would just be revoked. Like, hey, you're not allowed to access this. So it is easy for them to control. So what you do is, you essentially pass on that token along with all of your requests. Right? So we are going to do this very simple request. That's called a get type of request. In get type of a request, how do you pass variables? So let's say you have to say /gf. Remember. And then what do you do? How do you pass variables and the values? Sorry? No, I mean, let's say it's simple. Like, remember we had the thing about get girlfriends? Like /gf /something. How do you pass variable values? No? See, we spoke about something called as parameters, get parameters. So ID is equal to something and all those things, right? So that is the way you pass a get. So in a get request, this is how you pass it. You see here. So see, this is the endpoint. So newsapi.org is the server, right? We are using the HTTPS protocol. This is the v2. So there's a version 2 of the news API. This is the top headlines. Right, so that's just an API endpoint. After that, we are passing these parameters. Can you see these parameters? One of them is like sources is equal to TechCrunch. So we're just specifying new things. These are just query parameters. It's like a variable and the value. And the API key is this API key, right here. It's just going to put it back in here. May make sense? So this service has one method called as getNews. This getNews what will it do? It will create an HTTP client, okay, and create a get request. Okay, now this config, we'll talk about this later, but you can literally ignore this. That's fine. It was just I had to show something later, that's why I've added it, but forget it for now. So you get this? We create a new component by a new service using ng generate service and the service name. Okay, we all said once you do that we get this commit, right? So these two files are created for us, right? So just going back, so after that what I did is, okay, you have this service now, but this service you have to tell that, hey, first of all, sorry, you have to get, okay, a normal Angular application will not have the HTTP module imported by default. My point being, not all Angular endpoints need to call a server. Not Angular applications, not all Angular applications need to call a third-party server. Alright? So it's not bundled by default, but it's there. So it's imported, but it's not really bundled with your application. So that's why we are what we are doing is very simple. We are going to open one file. First of all, I'm going to open this service file, remember, which was created previously, okay, and there I'm going to add a dependency. See, this is how you add a dependency. What I'm saying is, hey, my service depends on an HTTP client, right? See, remember, when you type something in the browser, your browser acts as a client, but in here, your application should act as a client. That's why all you're saying is, hey Angular, give me a service called as HTTP client, right? So this our service depends on another service which is given by Angular. Does it make sense? Right? That's all I'm doing. In here we have this constructor. In constructor I'm saying, hey, give me a HTTP client. All right. And when you have this private, so I'm making it private, and this is a type of HTTP client. Okay. So you see, this is how you write a variable. So in TypeScript, what you do is you could have something like this. So let's say I'm going to have to create a new variable called as name. I write a name, and you could give it, let's say, Ninad, whatever, right? This is fine too, but this is JavaScript. You could add things with, let's say, string. This would be of a type string. If you make it, let's say, number, this would be an error. See, it gives you like a problem. Hey, this is a number, it shouldn't be string. So like that's how you create a new thing, right? So what we are doing here is we are just adding this HTTP client. Make sense? So we just told it, hey, import it and give it to me. After that, what we do is we go to the main app module, and in there we are going to import that HTTP client module, because your main application. So how are we going to import this HTTP client module? First, you tell the main application that, hey, this module requires you to have HTTP module, right? And then you're saying, okay, this application, okay, the Angular, take it. So for this module, it is made available for you, and then after where you use it, it's on you. I happen to use it in one of the service files, so I'm going to import that in the service file. That is what we did. So these are the two files I made changes to. Make sense? I'm going to go back now, add get request method. So now what we do is, after we have these things about the bootstrap code or the scaffolding code, what you have to do is, okay, you have to write the actual logic, right? So what is the logic? How do you get the latest news? So let's say there's an API somewhere in the world which say, okay, give me all the news, right? Let's say, remember previously we had a request for giving all the names of people in the class. So this way we have like, okay, just hit the endpoint, get the results, right? So let's say I were to use this endpoint. Can you see this? I get a JSON response. See, I'm typing this in my browser, I'm getting a JSON response. Okay, so this is like a JavaScript notation, right? So what do we have is like, okay, we have a object which has three parameters, status, okay, total results 10, and the articles that we have in here. The articles have a similar format like source, author, title, description, blah blah blah, all those things, right? Very simple, or no? Is it? Right? So that is what we are doing. All we are telling all we are telling is, hey, when you call this function called as get news, what you should return is, remember this HTTP client, and we're telling the name of a method like .get. Now get is a type of the request you're going to pass. It could be get, post, put, delete. Remember, four type of major type of request. I'm going to say get this request, and that's it. You see, because it is already in JSON, it will be automatically formatted for you as a JavaScript object. So that is taken care of for you. You don't have to worry about any of those things. Okay, so you created this service method. Now, how do you call this service method? Where will you call this service method, guys? Where will you call the service method? In the component, right? Okay, who said that? Okay, thank you. So so in the component, right? So in the component, what I'm going to do is, okay, whenever somebody types a thing and presses enter, I want to show it. Simple, right? So that's what I'm going to create a new component. How do you create a new component? No, no. Engine, you will create a new app. Remember? Generate. Good, thank you. Right? So that's what I'm doing. I'm just adding a new component using generate. Okay, I made a mistake here. Not new module, should be new component, right? So ng generate component name. Simple stuff. Once you do that, all you will, so it will give you a news component, right? This is just news component. I just said ng generate news component, okay, all those things, right? So in here, you get a news component. So forget about the spec file. This is for testing. Not going to look at that. It generates this news.component.ts file, right? And it has, again, we saw this. This is a decorator, right? The @ component. So it says that, okay, this class is a component class. It's called providing metadata about that class, right? Makes sense? We all should be very familiar with this now. The selector, like your custom HTML tag, right? The template URL where your HTML is present for this component, and your styles your URL. So let's say you have to have some special styles for this. Okay, they go in there. Now I'm going to say then that's it. You see, create a new thing, a new component, constructor, ng on in it. It gives you these two components are already like two methods built in for you. You could just change it, add it, whatever you want. Okay, and going up, you also basically add it in. You see, in the ng module, I'm going to add a new component. Remember, you could have these components created, but they all have to be linked to your ng module, because ng module is the base thing, right? In any Angular application, revolves around modules. Remember, and if your module does not know that a component is created, it's gone. All right. So that's all I did. After I just created a new component. Now, once you have the component, what do you do? So you would have to, remember what things we had like an article and all those things, right? So what I did is I just said, hey, I'm going to create a new division, ng for, it's a for loop. So it's simple for loop. So it could be like, okay, let articles of articles. Now let is a JavaScript keyword, which creates a locally defined variable. All right, you see, like in Java, you must have seen in Python, right? So like for I in this range. So this is exactly the same thing. This is a for loop. Okay, now how do I know the syntax of for loop? You should not. You should just Google. So Angular for loop, right? Simple. So ng for loop. See, simple. This, see, star ng for let items of items I is equal to index whatever. So let's say you have 10 items. It's just going to go through those 10 items and create those 10 different items for you. So remember, what we need to have is, okay, we need to have a division for each one of those articles, right? We need to show all the, right? Once you get the JSON object, how do you show it? Come on, how do you show it? I answer. You have to use a template, right? Good, thank you. So you have to use a template, because that is the only way that a user can see something happening. So for that template, how do you create a template? You have to generate HTML for it, right? How do you generate HTML programmatically? Using these loops. Excuse me. So when we have these loops, so what we're doing is we're just saying, hey, for an article, in all those articles, right, repeat this thing. Where's my GitHub? Here. See, I'm going to repeat this content for all the articles. And all I'm going to say is, okay, create a h2 tag, article.title. So the article.title will be in a h2 tag. There'll be a paragraph tag with the article description, and there'll be a tag with the article.url. Simple. In your case, let restaurant of restaurants, right? Restaurant.name, and there'll be an image tag, ing_src is equal to restaurant.url. Simple, right? That's what I'm doing here. I'm just rendering those things here. Now, that is the view part. Now you have to call this service. Remember, call this service, call the endpoint. That is a job of the service to call the endpoint. But as a component, you need to call the service to get stuff from the service. So here, all I'm doing is, remember, in the constructor again, since this component needs to use this service, I'm going to put a dependency injection, right? So here I'm injecting that service here. Do you get this here? See, I created a new thing, a variable called as news API, which is of a type API news service. See, I never specified which API news service. This is a very key thing. This is called the dependency injection. Tomorrow, while testing, you might have a service that is a dummy service. See, this service actually calls the API. But let's say you have to verify just that, hey, when the news article is 1 to 3, it should display 1 to 3 as a in bold. That could be one of your test cases. So how do you ensure that that endpoint will give you 1 to 3? It will not, because it's a production endpoint. It's going to give you the latest news, right? In that case, you could create a new service which is a dummy service, and it could allow you to test applications. So I'm just stating, so this is what Angular gives you. It's called dependency injection. For now, not important, but remember this. After that, we're saying, okay, on init. So on initializing this component, you could have your own function. Remember, it could be on click. Whenever you say type anything and say on button click, then call this service, right? Make sense? I'm using on init just because the simplicity. I'm saying this dot news API. So this API dot get news. I called that function. Okay. Now subscribe. Observables and subscribe is it's a Angular thing, kind of a thing. Subscribe is when you actually call the endpoint and you're waiting for the answer. Remember, you're calling an endpoint. You don't know it will be when it will give you the results back. Alright? It might take a few seconds. It might not succeed. It might fail. Right? It's a third party endpoint. So you have to be like, okay, I did it. Now I'm just waiting and sitting while it comes back to me, right? Because the response is not in your hand. The request is. Remember the first lecture we spoke about response and the reply, right? Similarly, I'm just subscribing for it, and I'm saying, hey, data. So again, this is a shorthand for a new method. I could have done function data and then the parenthesis, but this is just like, okay, so the value that you get after subscribing, give it to the data. All I'm doing is I'm just console.logging it. I'm just logging it onto the console, and I'm saying, and I'm setting a new. So remember, this is I created a new variable called as articles. Okay, and I'm saying this dot articles is equal to data, and you see do you remember the structure of the article that we got previously? It had like status okay, and then articles, the field called as articles. That's how I'm getting this. See here, you see here this articles, this is an array, this is a square bracket, right? It's an array. So I'm getting all the articles in that thing as a JavaScript variable, and this articles is what I'll be using in my view, which is used here, right? Remember, your controller and your view are always binded. Remember the architecture of Angular. Once you set a variable in your controller, it will be available on your view, and vice versa. Okay, so in this case, we are looping through all the articles that we have in here. After that, so now you have these things. How do you load this component now? Anyways, remember, we need to have two endpoints. So this is done, by the way. You can just render views now, like render news now. But let's say how do you have multiple endpoints, right? You know, /gf, /bf, or whatever, right? You need to have the home. On the home, you will have a navigation. On / let's say list, you could show the / profile. You could show the profile of that restaurant, right? So this is what I'm creating an endpoint. I'm creating a routing thing. What I'm saying is, hey, whenever you get something like /news, you call this component. We have seen this previously in Express. Remember, you're saying /something, call this function. This is the same thing happening. That's all I did. After that, now that this is done, that's it. When you do that, it will give you the stuff that is required. Now another point is you have to add bootstrap. Of course, you have to add bootstrap, right? And that is for the later. Let's say save it for that later. Let me go to this thing, get reset. Okay, it's compiled successfully, and it is running on 4200. If I say news, see, I get all the news in here. But if you go to the, remember the first component that we had, the app component, you could add here, let's say you add something like a navigation here, right? Whatever. If you go to the home page, you see this navigation. All right. But if you go to /news, you get the news, but the navigation is still there. Why? Because you see, I have the router outlet. The router component is going to go and grab components as you need them. So it's going to look at the URI. Hey, is it news? Is it profile? Is it whatever? And it's going to go and grab that component and post it in that area that you have given the component. Right? So that's all. That's what we have. But let's say you have to do something like, hey, whatever, I need to have a link for my news. Okay, no problem. A tag, right? And I could be like ahref. Okay, let's get a tag. I'm going to be like, let's say news, and let's say news, whatever. Refresh. See, on the home page, I have a news. Click on that. Hey, I have news. Right? Very simple. You could go and just look at the router examples. There are many on the internet, frankly. Okay, and that's all. We have a router outlet. We can see the news. We can do whatever we want here. After that, you have to import Bootstrap. Right? How do you import Bootstrap? Once you have this Angular, there's a good way to import Bootstrap. The bad way, or not the bad way, one way to install Bootstrap is just, remember, we just copy those CSS and all those things, copy and paste it on the head tag. Dead simple. Dead simple. Same thing. But the good way to do it is this. What you could do is you could bundle it with your application. So I ran the command. What did I run? I ran npm install bootstrap save. That's going to install bootstrap. I'm going to save it in my package.json file. So whenever you say npm install, it's going to remember the npm install command install all of your dependencies, right? In the folder called as node underscore modules. So let's say what you do is, you see this package.json file, right? What I'm saying is, hey, my application requires all these things, but these things are something that I have not made. They are there by default in the npm app store. Okay, so all I'm saying is, hey, download these things into a folder called as node underscore modules. So all the things that you have, this Angular and all those things will be referred from this node underscore modules folder. Okay, and what you do is, if I open this folder in the git ignore, see, I have this git ignore called as node underscore modules. I have removed everything that is under this directory. This will not be under the source control, because remember, it's in the app store. Why do you want to keep it in with you as well? Whenever you can install, so npm install is going to go to the app store and install all the dependencies, right? Simple. And after you install this, I'm going to change my angular.json file. If you open the angular.json file, it specifies the assets, the styles, and the scripts that you need. So in this file, I'm just going to add this thing. So node underscore modules. See here, node underscore modules. Right? We go to Bootstrap. Where is Bootstrap? It should be here. See, Bootstrap. Right? In Bootstrap, we have a called as a dist. That's a distribution. And CSS, and we have these things. I'm just going to install the bootstrap.css. Right? This is how you would import it from the CDN. If you copy paste those files, it's going to do the same thing. But here, all I'm doing is I'm compiling it with my software itself. So you get a single CSS file, right? So it compiles everything into your software and then boom, right? This allows you to have advanced functions later, which you don't need. But it just allows you to be more. Let's say if you were to use something called as Webpack, so it removes all the unnecessary code that you have. It just says, okay, you use the class button, that's it. Use button, remove everything else. You can do all those crazy things, but right now it's not important. But the important part is we are not importing Bootstrap from anywhere else. If you do the assignment submission, it's fine. But if you don't, this is the right way to do it. Try. Right? If you have some time, 1 hour, this shouldn't be that difficult to do. That's how you import Bootstrap. Any questions until this point? No? We all set? Okay. So let's say I had to add a button into our stuff here. I'm going to say get reset. So let's say I open my news component. Where's my news component? Come on. Where's my news component? Source. News component. News. Right? This is H1 Now in this A tag, I'm just going to add a button. All right. Button dash. I'm just going to say, let's say I'm going to add a button. Button. Right. And let's say class. I'm going to say link or whatever like that, right? And you could have the same thing, like let's say here. Now what happens if you go to localhost 4200? You see, you were supposed to put your navigation here. That's a copy paste from the Bootstrap site, remember? After that you go, you see I've got this link, this button on, it's repeated n times. That's it. And I added the thing called as, button primary and all those kinds of thingies. Make sense? Now I could just go to the app component here, and I could just make a dot container, and in the container I have the router output. Right? What happens then is, remember the container class, it just gives you a good place to stay, right? See what I did here. Component is only once, right? Remember the thing, the container is only once, and inside you have multiple things that you have. So as a Bootstrap, I just made an application with Bootstrap and Angular. So that was it for the Bootstrap part and the Angular part. So let's go at the Google Places API. So Google Places API is, of course, it's an offering by Google. It allows you to do place search, place details, place photos, and all those kinds of crazy things. You could also have place autocomplete. So let's remember, you could type your address and it will autocomplete the address for you. That's not what we're going to use. We're going to use place search API. Now remember, this is what we need to add. See the place finder request. This is the format of the request that we are going to send to Google. All right. See what is the end point? Give me a sec. Oh, place search. What is the endpoint? 6 HTTPS maps on blah 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 blah. Everything is the same. Remember, this remains the same. Right? What changes from here? Question mark parameters. Make sense? So you're going to specify the parameters. That is what? The key, the input, and the input type. So in here I could have, so let's say I have to have restaurants, right? Remember, see they give you the sample by themselves, so it's pretty simple. Nearby restaurants, you could just say, okay, / I'm going to say remember this remains the same, HTTP blah 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 blah, right? And Give me a sec, guys. Okay, go back. Okay, so where were we? Here. So see nearby search everything JSON, and the location here, it's in latitude and longitude, right? Remember, these are optional. You could specify something that you want. In this case, it's lat and long. You could just have a text query. You could just say query is equal to whatever the user types, and the type is equal to restaurant. So it's going to only show restaurant, and keyword, it is optional. Again, you could just skip these parameters. Everything before the question mark is compulsory, because it tells what are you asking for. You're asking for the places search API, right? That remains constant. Okay, otherwise how will Google know what to serve you with? But these things are all optional. And okay, your API key. Now, how you have to register your application with Google first. If you go to the overview, it talks about how these things are, the policies and all. You could go and read those policies. But in the getting started guide, you see, to get the API key, follow these steps. I'm going to this console. That is the, remember we used AWS console. Now we're using Google console. Pretty simple. All right. Okay. What do they say? Go to this. Click on the project drop down and select to create a project for you, and then add an API key. Okay. Here, this is a project drop down. See here, these are all the projects. In Google, we have this concept called as project. So in Google, you could have one project. In that one project, you have all the resources you need for that project. So let's say virtual machines, databases, API endpoint keys, everything. It forms as a, you could have multiple projects. So I have so many projects. I'm going to create a new project. Okay, new project, and okay, whatever, just create it. That's it. Okay, so you created this thing, and I was going to say click on the menu button and the API and services and the credentials, right? Okay, this API and services and then credentials. Okay, after that, on the credentials page, click credentials, API key, and close. Okay, create credentials, API key. Okay, okay, this is my API key, close. Okay, that's it, and done. Right? So now when you create a new request, you see this is a request. All right, I'm going to first of all paste my API. Remember, this is gone. See this, it's like this is gone, as in sense you cannot change this key. It's there for you by default. Now if I come in here and let's say I copy this request, where was the thing? Not here, not here. What the heck? Oh, here. See, if I copy this, right, if I paste it here, and instead of my API key, I'm going to put in my actual API key, that is this. Remember, I'm calling this manually through a browser. You have to call it through the this is again, this is a place search thing too. Okay, good enough. What's the problem?
So you need to call it from the project. Or inside the API key, you can authorize it to work for everyone.
So I have not done that.
Yeah.
It's unrestricted though. No, wait a sec. None. I'm just not putting in the restrictions on that. See, it's not restricted. Oh, it may take 5 minutes for the, okay, fine, forget it. Give me a sec, cancel. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go to places API. Places API. Okay. And in here, that's it. So the thing is, I didn't enable the places API. Okay. So if I go in here and I make the request now, it should be done. There you go. right? So I didn't enable that API. Again, just a matter of enabling and disabling what you need. So this is how you get things. Now, instead of location, I could have query. Let's say Albany. Okay, sorry, my bad. Type is equal to restaurant, so whatever. So if you go to the documentation and read about these things, of course, we'll look into this the next lab. But I expect you to have all of this done by the next lab. Like this API endpoint, I'll provide you hints. By the next time, if you cannot do it, I'm going to help you a little bit in the lab. But by the time you come next time, make sure you have these things done. All right. I use the news API. You can use a Google API. It's the same thing, right? It's just the endpoint is different. Make sense? Okay. Don't be afraid. It's very simple now. Okay, that's it in my end. Do you have any questions? Yes.
I guess next Monday is a holiday.
Are you kidding me?